it's dollars that are requested to be paid by the seller toward the buyer.
Great. That falls right into our discussion here. And just to give you a full overview now that I asked those questions, uh, the purpose of this, I want to talk um, about how to accurately analyze and compare competing offers to protect our clients. We also want to talk about how we craft a strong and competitive offer to get noticed. All right. So we're going to talk about both sides of competing offers and what we're working with. Sound good? All right. Number one, we need to protect our client. A big part of that is reducing risk and maximizing net proceeds. We also want to talk about crafting that attractive offer and being competitive without sticking our client's neck out so far that they're at risk of losing something. And I know that sometimes we get so excited and this client is so motivated. We're trying to pull our client back and they're saying, let's throw the kitchen sink at it. We need to be the voice of reason when we're talking about this, right? It's our job to be that restrictor plate so these people don't get too far ahead of themselves and put themselves in danger uh, from a liability perspective, and therefore put ourselves in danger. Because if we let our clients get hurt, whose fault is that? On some level, it's ours because they could screw these deals up all by themselves. We get paid the big bucks to protect them. So we have to say, hey guys, slow down. I want you to think about this from a risk management perspective. If you don't get this house, it's probably not the end of your life. But if you make a bad financial decision or promise something you can't deliver on, you stand to risk a lot of money. Uh, Also, we want to make sure that we strengthen our professionalism and our negotiation skills. That's what we need to protect. A lot of agents get into problems when we have a listing. And why do we like listings? I always say you can't double bag it unless you have the listing. Um, and I've also said that my favorite agent to work with is me. I'm comfortable in that, but I know that a lot of people are not, and it's very dangerous to do dual agency. I don't recommend doing dual agency, but I am welcoming of unrepresented buyers. Now, what happens if we prepare an offer after we've already received an offer from a co-broke agent? We're insider trading, and we need to make sure that we protect our most valuable asset, and that's our reputation. If we do anything to let anyone else perceive that we haven't been fair dealing in this process, then we're going to lose so much more than what we stand to gain in a commission. It's not about the commission, it's about the relationships with our clients and the relationships with the people that we do deal after deal after deal with. And if you do a dirty deal on this time at bat, you can believe that the agent across the table who feels that they've been mistreated, they're going to spread the word far and wide. So the best thing you can do is let everyone know at every opportunity that you want to make sure that there's an even playing field. And if we can't do that properly, then I don't even want you to think about writing an offer on one of your listings if there's a competing offer anywhere near it. Okay.
Justin.
Now, yes.
Okay, so I have a question. Are you a fan of us if we are going to write on one of our listings, which I try to stay away from too? Are you a fan of, if you're in the competition, to have a third party, whether it be another agent, a Titan partner, or somebody to present the offer to your seller at that point?
Mindy, I'm not just a fan, I'm the broker. I'm requiring that a third party be in receipt of those offers, because
Perfect.
that's the only way that we can avoid um, insider trading, so to speak, unless every other competing agent in that scenario agrees to allow you to do that, there's some method of time stamping these offers, or I'm a big fan of getting in front of this and saying, I have this listing, Mindy. My friend Christy's going to be writing on it. Kurt Johnston's going to be writing on it, and Mindy, you're writing on it. So I'll tell them who the other brokers are that are going to be writing offers. Christy is, works in my brokerage. These other two agents work from, cooperative brokerages. And if you would like to present your own offer, we're going to have that opportunity. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it in person, but if you would like to present virtually or over the phone, we could absolutely make accommodations for that. Now, a lot of agents aren't comfortable presenting it. They would just rather whip out the offer and email it to you and say, hey, good luck to me. But some agents, I'm going to venture a guess and say old school agents don't mind that opportunity to get in front of the client and present it. But if you're going to be in front of that client and presenting it, you better nail it. Because if you come off like you're over salesy or weak in the details, you're not going to be helping your client by doing that presentation. But I want everyone, as the listing agent, I want everyone to know that I'm going to be presenting it fairly. And I'll dig into that here in a little bit and let you know how I do that. So understanding the seller's priorities is one of the most important things for you to understand how to get them the best offer, right? What are some things that are going to move the needle for your seller? What are important considerations for your seller? Start off with the obvious one. Somebody tell me.
Net profit.
Net profit, price, net proceeds. So net profit is different, or net proceeds is different from price, because we might have seller help or seller concessions, as Kurt said. What are some other elements that might be important to the client?
Timing.
Terms and timelines.
Terms and timelines. And what about terms? Somebody tell me about terms.
Settlement date.
The contingencies?
Contingencies, yes. What kind of contingencies might we have? All kinds of creative contingencies, from what? Home inspections,
Sale and settlement.
sale and settlement. That's a deal killer. What else do we got? Those are good. We'll start with those. Appraisal, right? So those are considerations. We should have probably already had a conversation with our seller about what their great motivators are, right? We should have a big idea. Do our sellers, are they always in tune with what's motivating them?
Duh.
No, they don't know. But we need to be the Barbara Walters of the situation. We need to be, we need to be the journalist, the investigative journalist. We need to interview them. We need to ask them the questions to get them to think about what's really moving them, because they often don't know. So you need to be prepared to drag that information out of them. So that starts at the listing. Whenever you're going through your listing contract and you're showing them all this stuff, and you've sent them a sample agreement of sale, or maybe even the consumer guide to the agreement of sale, and they get to see all these blanks, every one of those blanks in that agreement of sale is something else, that it's a variable that could change, and it's something that they could fight over. And anything that somebody can disagree on, those are the primary movers, the motivators that we need to discuss with our clients. We should have those discussions easily or beforehand. Now, when we're talking about purchase price versus net proceeds, let me bring up the agreement of sale here. Christy, would you mind sharing back host capabilities? I think we should have most of the people.
There you go.
Great, I'm the host now. I'm making one little addition here because I hadn't included the agreement of sale, but I want to bring this up so we can look at it clearly.
Christy, who's your buddy there?
Oh my gosh, that is Goose. That's my daughter's dog that I watch during the day.
Mm-hmm.
She's a nurse, so she works
Your
12-hour
your
shifts.
grandbaby sitting?
Yes. Yeah, he's part what?
Goose.
Jug? A jug? A jug? I guess. Pug and Jack Russell?
Okay, so Kurt, you were saying there were seller concessions. Was that buyer broker fee or closing cost assistance that we were talking about as a point of comparison?
The one that I had was closing cost assistance.
Closing cost assistance. And in today's modern market, you know, 2 years ago, we didn't usually need to take into consideration buyer broker fee because we were offering that out and it was basically going to be a constant or a consistent. It wasn't going to come down as a point of comparison. But now, buyer broker fee is as likely to be a point of comparison as closing cost assistance. But anything under seller concessions is going to be considered the same thing when it comes to net offer, unless they're all the same. I usually don't bring in, if something's the same across all four offers, I usually don't complicate the thought process for my seller. I'm trying to lead them down. I'm trying to eat as much stress for them as possible, right? I'm trying to make the discussion easy for them. I don't want to have to give them 17 points of comparison if there's only two variables to consider, because this is super stressful for agents who do it every day, let alone a client who does it once every 10 years and may never have had to contemplate competing offers. So we want to keep it as easy to digest for them as possible in my mind, in my approach. And if somebody has a different approach to that, let me know. But I don't think creating confusion is beneficial for us.
Yeah, my only question on that was how does it affect the escalation clauses? Should it be like the second one or whatever?
Well, whenever we go to the price escalation addendum, it tells us exactly how to deal with it right here. So is everybody familiar with the price escalation addendum? Maybe not. I will direct you all to my favorite resource. My favorite resource is parealtors.org. And if I hadn't fat fingered that, so if we go to standard forms, we have to put in our login at parealtors.org. I'm already logged in. We're going to go in and put in price escalation addendum. Not only do you get the actual form, but you also get the guidelines for preparation and use for that form, just like every other form in our PAR library. Go to here to parealtors.org and you can view those guidelines, and it'll give you the breakdown of what we're dealing with. So on the price escalation addendum, it says this addendum is presented to the seller as part of the buyer's offer. This is presented by the buyer to make sure that the buyer's representation, the agent is basically in the room and giving a measure of that buyer's enthusiasm so that the sellers know how much they want the property. And I want you to think of this as a measure of that buyer's enthusiasm. It's not the last word, it's just a good indicator of where they're willing to go. Should the seller accept the buyer's offer, buyer and seller will have entered into a binding agreement under the terms of this agreement and or other addenda. So if we accept that offer, we're going to make the changes down here in section A. Everybody signs it, and this is a deal. But to answer Kurt's question, if prior to the seller's acceptance of the buyer's offer to purchase, the seller receives from another prospective purchaser a bona fide offer, what makes it a bona fide offer? Filled out correctly, it's signed, it's in writing, we have a pre-approval letter or proof of funds. That's what makes it bona fide. A bona fide offer to purchase the property with terms acceptable to the seller and a net purchase price. So that's the purchase price less any identified seller assist and seller financial concessions, equal to or higher than the net purchase price offered by my buyer, because I'm the agent who filled this out. And the buyer agrees that the net purchase price of the buyer's offer is increased so that the net purchase price is higher than the net purchase price in the competing offer. So let's talk about that. Christy wrote me an offer of $200,000 with $5,000 in seller assistance of whatever flavor. So 195 net. Kurt, you wrote me an offer of 195 with an escalation clause of $1,500 steps up to a max of $200,000. So even though her offer is 200,000 to start, your offer at 195 is exactly the same as hers in net proceeds, right? Or as a net offer, correct? And then you're escalating by $1,500 over her net. So
Justin, can I
yours
ask
goes to
a, sorry.
196.5. Yeah, fire away.
I hate to ask this question, but I don't really understand I don't understand the escalation clause, in general. Can you give me
Okay.
like a brief overview?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a listing that is in demand. We've had 35 showings over the past 5 days. And we received an offer and we set a deadline of, let's say showing started on Wednesday. We had an open house scheduled for Sunday, and my sellers felt very strongly about holding that open house and allowing all the agents who had the property scheduled to see it. They've got big hearts and they wanted all those buyers to have the opportunity to check it out. So those 35 showings over 5 days materialized into 10 people who were interested in submitting an offer on the property. We received the first offer. So I set a deadline, or my sellers set a deadline for Monday afternoon that they would review the offer they had. And they asked me to reach out through showing time, through personal phone calls to agents who had shown it, through making a note in the MLS that there was a deadline of 5 o'clock on Monday afternoon to have all offers submitted. And the way I usually word that is the seller has decided to review all offers at 5 p.m. on Monday. We'll review those offers at their convenience and offer a response sometime on Tuesday. I don't like rushing into it because that's how mistakes happen and you paint yourself into a corner. Now, rather than 10 agents try and talk to their clients about, hang on a second here, I'm trying to move my mouse. Rather than 10 agents trying to counsel their clients on what the actual value of this property is, you should come in at 200, you should come in at 205, you should come in at 197. The conversation we often have with our clients is, ooh, I really want it, but I don't want to offer more than it's worth. So an escalation clause is a mechanism to automatically raise the price of your offer without being in the room. So you can offer as little as you feel comfortable, but it will escalate in a predetermined step up to a predetermined cap. And that way, you know that you're not just throwing money into the wind and overbidding for a property. The way I usually tell my clients is, just that if you don't want, if you want to win the property, but you're concerned about overbidding, this is a great mechanism for doing that. For example, property's listed at 200, you like it at 200, you assume that the other people who like it at 200, and they're probably going to bid 205. Well, if they like it at 205, what are you going to have to do to win? Are you going to go to 2075? I bet that's exactly what they're thinking as well. What is the highest amount that you would feel comfortable paying for this property? Is it 215? If it's 215, but you're concerned that you might be throwing $15,000 extra money at the seller and that's more than you need, escalation clause is the way to go. You can write your offer at 200, escalating in $1,500 or $2,500 steps up to that cap of 215. Is that a decent enough explanation about what the escalation clause does?
No, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Does that mean that your offer increases by that incremental amount above somebody else's offer until your cap is reached?
That's correct. And I'm
Okay,
going to show
cool.
you an offer comparison sheet, a complicated one, blow your mind, about how fast this can go and all the different variables.
Oh, wow. Okay,
So we're going to talk about that in just a second here.
cool. Thanks.
Other stuff that we can go into on that escalation clause, the mortgage contingency being waived. I don't know if I've ever had somebody who wrote an offer with financing initially and then decided to waive the mortgage contingency. Anybody else ever have that happen? Like, I'm going to go with a conventional loan until I know that I'm being challenged and then I'm paying cash. Most people just come in cash. Or the loan amount stated in the mortgage contingency is increased by the amount necessary to keep that loan to value ratio steady. That's a very common one that we see checked. Another one that we might see is not checking that one, but instead checking this one and saying that the first $5,000 of the difference between the original purchase price and the new purchase price will be paid in cash at settlement. And then the remaining difference will be added to the loan amount. This one should always be included, that an updated proof of funds is going to be included if it wasn't included initially. And then we often see an appraisal contingency included with this.
Hey,
This
Justin,
is, yes,
I have a question.
go ahead.
So, okay, so I just had like an issue kind of come up. So if you do not include an appraisal contingency, right? So
Yes,
you're writing an offering, you don't include the appraisal contingency, but it's financing and the appraisal doesn't come back. Does the financing contingency cover that? Does that make sense how
yes,
I'm wording that?
yes, absolutely. So if we have not included an appraisal contingency, then you absolutely damn well better
Click that. Okay.
click that. The loan amount stated in the mortgage contingency is increased by the amount necessary to keep the loan to value ratio percentage derived consistent, because otherwise there is zero protection for your client. If we have not adjusted the loan to value ratio and the appraisal comes in short, then there is no redemption for your buyer client in that situation. Now, what's the difference between the financing contingency and the mortgage contingency? You've probably heard me say that before. Anybody? What's the difference between appraisal contingency and the mortgage financing? The appraisal contingency gives you the right to terminate the agreement if the appraisal comes in short. If under the mortgage contingency, the appraisal comes in short, then your loan to value ratio is not going to be met in the financing contingency or the mortgage contingency. Does that give you the right to terminate the agreement if the appraisal comes in short based on paragraph H?
No.
No, it does not give you the right to terminate. However, you won't be forced to buy the property according to the contract. But that doesn't mean that the seller can't fight you to retain funds. That is the type of risk that we are looking to insulate our buyer clients from in crafting our agreement. So I'm going to stop the share right here so I can look you in the eyes and say, if we are escalating, I want you to do two cost sheets, friends. I want you to do a cost sheet at the offer price, and I want you to do a cost sheet at the fully escalated price. If we're including appraisal gap contingency, I want you to do the cost sheet based on whatever that gap is. And if I'm speaking Greek to you, then we're going to work on that in small groups or in mentorship groups or in one-on-one sessions so that you can clearly understand that. And before you go to battle in a multiple offer situation, we're going to talk about how to make sure that you've ran those numbers correctly with your clients, okay? I don't want to get too far in the weeds that we lose all the other discussions on multiple offer situations, okay?
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
So, in regards to that, with like the appraisal contingency there, I was always under the assumption that if your financing was FHA, you wouldn't need an appraisal contingency because that was pretty much built into the FHA. But if it was
100% correct.
okay, but if it was conventional financing, then you always wanted to have the appraisal contingency unless the buyers had extra money sitting in a bank account somewhere that they were willing to throw to that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep, absolutely, 100% correct. You don't need, or you're not supposed to use an appraisal contingency with FHA or VA deals.
Okay. And then I've done it in the past, but I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on it. As a listing agent, is it okay to decline escalation clauses? Because I know like when things were at the peak of the market and you were getting like, 10 offers in and they all had escalation clauses and it kind of like melts your brain to try and figure all of that out. I had asked about that and I was told that you could just like put in the agent remarks, no escalation clauses, please. Is that something that you guys are okay with?
It can be done. I don't know that I don't know that it serves a purpose in my mind. I don't necessarily have a problem with requesting actual numbers,
Like
but
highest and best? Uh,
yeah, but I think that tends to put a cap on offers, right?
okay.
Because everyone's afraid of overbidding. Um, I think there's a psychological concept here where I don't want to be the only one bidding 250 on a property listed for 200, but I'd go to 250 if I knew that I was only beating the rest of the pack by 1,500 bucks. Like
Okay.
if everybody else is going to 247.5, if there's 7 other offers at 245 through 247.5, and I'm the only one who's smart enough to go to 250, I'm happy with that. But if I, you know, think that I'm the only one going to 250, I might keep my offer back at 235. I think that the escalation clause gives buyers permission to just go nuts.
Okay, well then that kind of leads me into another question. Um, Working with the buyers, a lot of times, like if you're the first offer in, we
Yep.
do the escalation clause. You can do them later too, but a lot of times that first offer is escalation, especially if it seems like a property that's going to get a whole lot of activity. So with trying to protect your buyer, how, because obviously you've kind of unzipped your fly and said, hey, we're willing to go up to 250, right? So the seller knows that. So what's going to stop them from, even if it doesn't escalate up with the other offers?
Excellent
What the,
question.
They have to
I don't,
provide you with a competitive offer that they're rejecting. They can't escalate your offer unless they have one that they can prove to you escalated past your offer.
now,
right.
was that Joe?
Yeah.
Well, that's
Well,
true as far as the paperwork goes, but that doesn't mean that the seller can't still come back and be like, well, yeah, the paperwork says this, but you already told me that you'd go here, so that's where I want to sell it at.
it's absolutely right. Both of you are absolutely correct. I never submit an escalation clause until I've been notified that I'm competing. I will prepare the escalation clause. I will keep it in my dot loop. I won't send it until I know I'm competing because, as you put it, they you've shown them your cards. Joe, you're correct. They technically can't employ an escalation clause until they have a competing offer. What they can do is make a counter offer, right? They can make a counter offer and say, Melissa, you know, we do have your escalation clause. I would like to deal with your client. We really like that offer. Would you accept? And they can make that counter offer. Now, if there's no other offers, can they escalate above asking price? Man, that's tough. I don't know if I would have to. That depends. You know, that's a
Isn't that countering? Isn't that countering?
yeah. It's countering. I mean, yeah, it's countering. Absolutely.
Well, isn't that bullshit?
No,
Now, the buyer can always turn it down or accept it at that point.
yep. So I'll talk about that here in a second. But let's talk, since you opened the door, Melissa, about financing type. I always have the discussion with the seller about the hierarchy of money. Cash is king, right? Why is cash king? No strings attached. We don't have to mess with an appraisal 95% of the time. And we know if the buyers bring in cash, there's somebody else there to work with if something goes sideways. If somebody's using 100% financing or 96.5 in the case of an FHA, and we need to rebuild a front porch or replace 22 windows or scrape and paint a barn, who would I rather be fighting? Who would I rather be in that foxhole with? The person with $200,000 or the person with, 3.5% of that, 9,000 whatever dollars? Yeah, the person with all the money, because then we can wheel and deal. We can say you can handle these condition issues after closing, or we'll split the cost before closing. So cash is king. Conventional is next. We have far fewer hoops to jump through, right? And then we have, in my mind, all government loans lumped together. If there's alphabet involved, it means that there are extra boxes on the appraiser's checklist. When he's walking through the house with his clipboard, there's other things that they're looking for. And I want to work with veterans as much as possible. I'm not discounting VA loans. I'm putting all government loans or anything else with a higher standard of appraisal consideration in a separate category from conventional and cash.
And then within conventional, you have the different levels depending on down payment.
Um, yeah, typically. I mean, from a condition standpoint, conventional is conventional, except for one condition. If it's PHFA, so you've got an alphabet associated with that, PHFA conventional smells a lot like FHA. They're going to have the same overlays for well and septic. They're going to have the same considerations for life of the roof, stuff like that. But in today's tightening lending and insurance environment, insurance can be as much of a concern as, appraisal whenever it comes to the life of the roof and some other considerations, trees, stuff like that. Contingencies. Inspections are a big one. This is why we like competing offers. Now, here's a consideration. If somebody, well, let me back up. Lawsuits and mediations have taken off in the past 5 years at the same rate as competing offers have taken off. And I say that's because more buyers have decided not to do a home inspection. Home inspections may be something that your seller wants to avoid because they don't like question marks and they like slam dunk deals that are going to close after you write the deal. There's just much less decision making, much less negotiation to go on. But if there's not a home inspection, there's a higher potential that that buyer is going to be dissatisfied and come back and make problems after the closing. Does that make sense to everybody? A home inspection by a buyer on your listing protects your seller. If your buyer decides not to do a home inspection, what's something we can do to protect our seller in that case? That's right, Christy, seller shield. It's a home warranty product that protects sellers in the case there might be a non-disclosure issue. Provides like $25,000 in legal protection for that seller if a buyer comes back with a non-disclosure issue. Get into the practice of having your clients fill out that disclosure using Seller Shield. And I warn my clients up front, especially if it's an estate, a flipper, a POA, or a multiple offer situation where the buyer has decided not to do a home inspection, spend the $300 and get the extra protection using Seller Shield. Yeah, Mike Rossi, you raised your hand, or were you just gesturing at your
No,
camera?
I'm sorry. I started talking without unmuting it. With the Seller Shield training that's coming up, is that going to be by you, Justin, or is that going to be the actual people from Seller Shield?
That's going to be by somebody who knows what they're talking about from
Awesome.
Seller Shield. So try and catch that one.
America.
Yep. Inspections, appraisals or something. Septic. That's one that could really cause big issues, right? But if I have a seller, I really want that buyer to get that septic inspected. Just like anything, if you put it in the ground and leave it there for 50 years, it could potentially have issues with it. The one contingency that I really want my sellers to avoid entering into is the sale and settlement of other property contingency. Why is that such a problem? Because me, as a control freak, I don't have any control over what that other agent is doing in North Carolina or Alabama or Mississippi or Adams County. I mean, if I don't have the listing, I don't have the clients, I don't know these people, I don't have any control over it at all. Now, sometimes it can't be avoided, but it's something that you really have to weigh when you're entering into this multiple offer situation. Why is that? You've got 10 offers on this property. This is the best chance you have to get the best possible terms. If you enter into a contract that's contingent upon sale and settlement of another property and that falls through, what are the
No.
chances of you going back on the market and getting terms as good as you have them in this very moment? Nil. You're not going to get this. Lightning doesn't strike twice. You've done everything you could to set the stage for this scenario. It's not going to come back. Never again. Are you going to get multiple offers if you have to go back on the market? If you do, you're a wizard. Timelines and logistics. Settlement date's important to your clients. Occupancy needs, you could do a rent back from the buyer. We see that a lot with those lease back provisions. But we definitely want to talk about the risk factors with our sellers when we're comparing these offers. The appraisal risk. And here's one of the reasons why I really like to employ pricing as a risk management strategy. If I have a property that might go for 300, but I feel is very well suited in the 275 range, and I'm just not sure if it's going to appraise for that 300. If I price that at 275 and I get competing offers from buyers that take it up to that 310 or over 300 range, where I was kind of questioning whether it would appraise at 300 anyway, whose fault is that? If it sells for more than I listed it for, it's the buyer agent's fault if it doesn't appraise. If I list it at 310 and sell it at 310 and it doesn't appraise for 310, that's my fault as the listing agent. And I've got some answers to come up with because I sold it for more than it was worth. But if I priced it at 275, I get offers that take it up to 310. At that point, I can start talking to the buyer's agent and start talking about appraisal gap protection. And that's a reasonable ask as a listing agent who priced it at 275 in the face of an offer at 310 and saying, okay, well, I priced it at 275. I know it's going to appraise at 275. Bring me appraisal gap protection above 275 and we have a deal. But if I listed it at 310 and I get an offer at 310, I can't go back to that buyer's agent and say, give me appraisal gap protection back to 275 because I listed it at 310. Does that make sense? Or did I just talk fast and lose you all?
Yes.
No,
I
makes
lost you.
sense.
Okay, good. It makes sense. I heard makes sense. Mike, are you still trying to talk?
No, he just has his hand up. He's just keeping it up there permanently, I think.
Okay. Now, let me show you a comparison sheet. This is a real live comparison sheet that one of you in this Zoom meeting is going to recognize. You don't have to speak up. Do you see my beautiful comparison sheet with 11 offers?
Yep.
This was a multi-unit property. I think it was listed at 255. And you can see that most of the offers came in somewhere in that range. We had one that came in at 235 because why? Because the buyer didn't want to pay more than they had to. But they were willing to escalate in $1,000 increments the whole way up to 276,501. So we had 11 offers in an effort to help our clients understand what was going on. I highlighted those offers. I highlighted those offers to accentuate the ones that I thought were rising to the top. Now, all offers were conventional or better. All conventional or cash, because this was a highly competitive property. It escalated, in this case, up to $300,000 from 255. In this case, they had or I'm sorry, 300, 275, and 286. Based on the seller's preference, they asked that we compare these two properties right here. Because this one had an appraisal contingency at 280. It was discounted, okay? This one here had a home inspection. He didn't want to mess with it. These two had no inspections. This one here, being cash, had no appraisal consideration. And this one here had a $10,000 appraisal gap and was, it only had to appraise for 286 based off so price after escalation was 286. Oh, and this one since there was no compensation offered, we had to take into account realtors' fees, Kurt. So we had to put their commission in here. So that was a point of comparison. That was seller help on every deal, basically across the board. So that's why we came down to net purchase prices. Okay. Now, to Joe's point, am I allowed to counter an escalation clause? We had a net purchase price of 266,748 over here. And we had a net purchase price of 277,517 over here. This one was cash. This one was mortgage. According to escalation clauses, if we went strictly by escalation clause, I would have had to accept offer number 11 because it went to 292, 499 or 500. But we have the freedom to counteroffer any offer that we receive. So I went to the cash buyer in this case and said, man, we really like how clean your offer is, but we have a financed offer that's 10, I didn't say 10 grand more. We have a financed offer that is significantly higher. Would your seller or would your buyer be interested in adjusting their offer? The answer was yes. And they came up significantly in cash. And they settled, I think, in 3 weeks.
Hey,
There's some
Justin,
other, yeah.
how much can you tell the other agents about the other offers? When you go back to this one and you're like, okay, I think I want to negotiate with you. How much can you let them know about the other offers?
You can speak in general terms, but you cannot. It's counterproductive to be overly specific. I don't feel that we have confidentiality with the buyers, but if I had gone back to the seller and said, we have an offer 10,000 higher, where are they going to bring their offer to? 10,000 higher. If I say we have an offer that's significantly higher, similar terms, would your buyer be interested in adjusting your offer? It came up $15,000, I think. So to be overly specific is counterproductive. What we're trying to do is pull better terms. And I'd like to avoid being specific because it also lends to insider trading. It's bad for your reputation to go offer shopping and say, hey, I got an offer from Mike at 215. Can you come to 216? I think that's a little scummy. Personally, I mean, I think that you're showing more than you should. I think it's better form to say, hey, I've got better terms or I've got a higher asking price. Can you do better? And give them the opportunity to come to that.
Justin,
Yes.
can we go back to what you said a minute ago? And you said something to the effect of like, if we followed the escalation, we would have had to take whatever the offer was. So what did you mean by that?
Escalation. If we went with purely, if we were forced to accept purely the highest escalated offer, right? If we went purely by escalation, then we have to accept the highest offer. Right?
Okay, but we don't.
We don't
Okay.
because so much of the offer is not the sale price, It's the terms, it's the closing date, it's whether or not there's any other contingencies. It's, so much else goes into it. And that's why when leading this off, I want you to understand that that escalation clause is a measure of their enthusiasm. It just tells you where we could go with this. It gives you a hint, and you're still free to go back and counteroffer that to really get the terms you want. If I'm a listing agent and somebody calls me and says, I think I got a low ball offer you, is it worth writing up? Yes, absolutely write it up. Because
Sure.
if I have another offer that's decent and I've got a bad offer, I'm going to use that bad offer to get the good one better.
So in your
Because
eyes, how is that not shopping?
it's not shopping. I'm now speaking from a place of truth that I have a competing offer. I'm not telling them, I'm not calling Mindy and saying that Christy just wrote me a crap offer. I'm calling Mindy and saying, Christy just wrote me an offer. Does your client wish to adjust theirs?
I had always heard that, I hear this from buyers a lot. Well, what was the other offer? Should we go any higher? And I had always heard that it's illegal for the listing agent to tell you what any other amounts of any other offers. And that's what I tell my buyers. Correct?
Which leads into, Justin, we have a question from the audience, which will lead into that, which is, an agent said, I get what you're saying, but isn't it up to the seller to disclose current offers? Like, isn't it up for the seller to say, you know what, Christy, you can go ahead and tell them the highest offer we have out there.
Yes. Yes. It's up to the seller. It's the seller's decision, and it's not our secret to keep per se. However, I think it's counterproductive in most cases to say exactly how much money we're talking about, because then the other offer only has to beat it by a hair. Right? By $500. Is $500 compelling? No. I'd just like to tell them, hey, here's where it is. And if we have to go deeper on it, and I'm speaking in generalities here, it's counterproductive to say on a $200,000 listing, Christy, Mindy wrote me an offer for 201. Can you do any better? Well, now I've got an offer for 202. Who's that help? Nobody. But if I can say to Christy, I have a competing offer from Mindy. Would your buyer like to adjust their offer? Ah, crap. We were hoping to steal it. Now we got to go guns blazing. I might get it up to 210.
Now,
And if
I have
somebody says, hey, is it worth me writing an offer? Yes, writing an offer. Because if I'm calling Christy and saying, Mindy wrote me an offer, and now Stacy says, is it worth me writing up this lowball offer? Yep, write it. Now when I'm talking to Christy, I've got two other offers. Oh man, everybody wants this. I really got to get serious with this offer.
Hey, Justin, are you coming
Yeah.
back to me and telling me that Christy's going to write an offer so that
Oh
I can
yeah.
pay both sides of the transfer tax and eke her out?
Yes, absolutely. Everybody has to have the same advantage. And let me show you something else here. So what I do every single time that I have multiple offers, you can see my super colorful sheet here. I have the agent's name and I have the agent's phone number, and I have a section down here
Wait,
for
we can't see
pros.
your sheet. Can't see your
Uh-oh,
sheet.
sorry. Now you can see my sheet.
There you
Two of
go.
the most important lines on this sheet are the agent name and the agent phone number, because as I'm compiling these 11, and I've set a deadline for Monday at 5 p.m., and I've told everyone that we will review these offers and offer a response at the seller's convenience sometime on Tuesday. Why do I want so much time? I want that much time because I want to understand what these offers are, and I don't want to rush and make a mistake. And I want the time to call every single one of these agents, make sure that they know they're competing, ask them, or, I'm going to read them basically the terms of their offer as I understand it. and make sure that we are understanding, because I don't want to accept offer number 7, go back and tell 10 other agents that they lost the deal, and then send the accepted offer to offer number 7 and they say, "Ooh, man, did I screw up. I didn't, man, I filled that out wrong." Right? Has an agent ever made a problem, an accident on a contract? Yes. Did an agent ever use a form that they did not understand? Yes, it happened on this deal. I called the Remax agent. I said, "Hey, I just want to review this offer with you, make sure that I'm understanding it and presenting it correctly. Hey, thanks for reaching out. That's awesome. What else does that do for you?" That builds rapport, that lets everyone know that you're not insider trading and that you're not taking favorites. I let them know that there's 11 offers in total. I'm calling all of the agents. I want to make sure I understand it. Do you have any questions for me? No. Okay. Well, I wish you luck. Talk to you later. That is how I do that. Now let's look at the other side. How do we craft an offer to get noticed in this multiple offer situation? Pay cash every
High
time.
and clean. High and clean.
High and clean.
I
Pay
like
cash every
to pay-
time, right?
I like to pay both sides of the transfer tax.
Yep.
Mindy, why do you like to do that though?
Well, because you're not affected by the appraisal.
Correct.
Yes.
So I say we can bid as high as we like, but we really need to appraise unless you're sitting on a pile of cash that I'm unaware of. Can you afford? And I always check with my lender too to make sure they're
What's
paying for that.
What's another way to increase the seller's net without affecting the appraisal? Buyer pays agent compensation on the buyer side. Okay. So you could conceivably add 4% to the seller's net with zero impact on appraisal value. So, Mike, just want to make sure that I answered your question there with the unwritten aspects of the deal. Whenever I'm calling all the agents to make sure I understand the terms of their deal, that is how we address that. What's another way to make your deal stand out?
Treated like shit, and all that makes her feel stupid. It makes her feel like no one can actually love her. You want to know why she can't communicate properly? We'll hear this.
I'm coming to the rescue. Hold on.
I got it. Done. What's another way to make your deal stand out?
But I always call. Number one rule is you got to call. You got to call. Never
Yes.
ever just deliver an email. You've always got to introduce yourself to the agent, make yourself known, tell the story to bring your contract to life.
I also
I
like
hear
to have, I also like to have my lender call the list agent.
Yeah, it's a good one too.
I don't forget that you should always use ChatGPT to come up with page 14 freehand remarks. It makes everything so much solid and it's easier.
Shut up, Mike.
Love it.
That was a prank.
Kristen's face just was like, "What
I'm
in the
I'm
hell is
muting Mike
happening right
Rossi.
now?"
I'm muting Mike Rossi. That's bullshit. Don't do that.
That
If
is
you are,
funny.
here's a couple other tricks that you can employ. If there's a condition issue with the house, this one, I had a listing, this won the deal for the buyer's agent. They paid for a home warranty for the seller until closing. So that home warranty went to the buyer but there was a home warranty that covered the seller the rest of the time they were in that home, which was 2 months over the winter. That was a meaningful gesture to the seller. April says pay both sides of the transfer tax. Absolutely. Another way to stand out. What if that agent has a favorite lender? And I know they have a favorite lender. I might reach out to them, and I don't want to screw Micah out of a deal, but
Way to
maybe
go, Jason.
maybe Micah is their favorite lender. Hey, just want you to know I'm going to use Micah on this deal. That's brownie points. Calling and making nice with that agent, best thing you can do. Compliment them, tell them they're good looking. I've always admired you. This is a great chance for us to work together. This is great. I heard you serve time with my cousin. Whatever. Whatever. Um, the worst thing you can do is send that offer with no explanation. It just shows up in their inbox. They don't even know about it. Don't do that ever.
Well, and if you use that cover page, that gives them a good idea as to what to look for. And also, Christy gave me some really good advice one time where you highlight on the agreement of sale what your EMD is, what your all your contingencies. And also when you call the agent, listing agent, and say, because they don't include, there's always something that pops up that's not included in the agent notes that you should know about, or they don't put it in there. Say if they know the age of the roof or it's not in the seller's disclosure, there's always a little something, plus you build that report. You don't necessarily have to kiss their ass now, okay? But
Yeah.
you get to know a little bit more about how the deal's going, if they have any offers. Plus you're already going to call about the compensation.
Is there a closing date that your seller's trying to hit? Right? Hey, and if the seller's, not interested in packing up all the furniture, just let us know. The buyer may be interested in taking some of that off their hands. How do you
Hey,
not get an offer accepted, Christy?
I want to go back to Susan real quick. If you guys aren't using that technique, you really should make sure that you're coloring in the points that you want to highlight. Use that. You can pick green or whatever color. I use it all the time when I'm writing offers, so it stands out. So my offer stands out. What were you gonna say, Justin?
How can I make sure my offer is not accepted by Christy? I offer feedback on the offer I'm about to write, saying that my buyer is concerned about the smell in the basement, or I'm electing a home inspection, and I've already offered feedback that I'm concerned about moisture in the basement.
Yeah,
Right?
don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't signal how you're going to blow the deal up later. Keep that to yourself.
Would it be, I mean, I find it beneficial to see if I can get my buyers underwritten ahead of time. So I'm sending a fully underwritten pre-approval and potentially even waiving the mortgage contingency if myself and the lender feel comfortable with that. And so do the buyers, and they understand the repercussions of that.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. A pre-underwritten conventional loan is almost as good as cash. A conventional loan free of appraisal, like you can call Micah and say, hey, what about this offer? Do you think we can get a waiver on this? He can run that through his meat grinder and tell you that, yeah, you've already got a waiver on that. Write the deal. At this price, you have a waiver. And that is dynamite. Good as gold. Great point. One of the things that I want to urge to you as a listing agent and a buyer agent, don't rush it. If you are the listing agent and you're accepting offers, just because you're putting a deadline tonight at 5 doesn't mean that you have to offer a response tonight, but before you go to bed. Okay? You could do that tomorrow. There's no sense rushing this. keep calm, carry on. But as a, an unintended side effect of taking your time is other people might continue to try to sneak offers in. So what happens in that case? Do we let them in? Well, just make sure that everybody who's had a showing, that you've stopped showings in advance far enough that everybody who's had a chance to write is given the chance to write, and you can hopefully limit that. I don't ever go back to the other parties and say that they have lost the offer until I have signatures by both parties on the winning offer. Because if I go back to offer number 10 and tell them that number 11 won, what's number 10 going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to raise their offer and screw with you. And
Yeah,
now you
we've
have to
made that
call back.
mistake.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now you have to call back to number 11 and say, I told you you won, but you didn't win.
It's awful. Just don't do it. We've done it already.
And as another point, a surefire way to protect your sellers, and it doesn't work out this way every time, have the buyer's agent make the changes on the contract and let your sellers be the last initials on that agreement. That way, if other offers come in or if there's other changes along the way, you're not stuck trying to rescind an offer or a counter offer signed by the seller. Okay.
Hey, Justin, can we just talk about real quick about, I know there's a place on the appraisal, or on the escalation clause to write where the new price is, but I truly believe that it should go on the contract as well, to change that price on that, page 2.
So we run into a little bit of an issue with that. Like, yes, if you put it on the appraisal contingent or on the price escalation addendum and the seller signs it, no other initials are required by anyone anywhere, right? But what has happened more times than I care to count is that the agent on the other side doesn't get that over to the appraiser, or the appraiser doesn't look at the price escalation addendum, or the title company that the buyer's working with misses that price escalation addendum, and everyone forgets that the offer price was 275 and the accepted offer price was 310. Now the appraisal comes in at 275. And we go back and say, but wait, the sale price was 310, and the appraiser's like, sorry, I made my appraisal. It's 275. I can't really do anything about it. It's important to have that accurate information. So, as Christy said, either change it on the agreement of sale, but now you need a new set of initials on the agreement of sale. Or when you send this back to the buyer agent, don't send it as 2 PDFs, send it as one. And make sure a price escalation addendum is checked on page 14 so that all the underwriters can see that that price escalation addendum is included in the agreement of sale. I want it all in one document so that the appraiser can't miss that the price that they are reluctant to come under is 310, not the 275.
If the buyer agent is able or willing, would you request a clean contract that removes the price escalation addendum altogether on page 14? So when the appraiser gets it, they don't see that the price went higher than asking and maybe won't think that?
I usually don't try to game the system in that fashion. I think it's beneficial to let the appraiser know that we had 11 offers and that this wasn't the highest escalated. I think it shows a measure of enthusiasm and is indicative of the market. I mean, in our market for years, agents who had properties who went over asking price would go into the MLS and raise the sale price before making it pending. That's not representative, and that's not okay. Because the appraiser sees that you're trying to game the system right off the bat. I usually don't go back for a clean copy, but I'm not necessarily condemning it. More than one way to skin a cat, I guess. Any other questions on these?
Justin, the only reason why I do is because I did have a appraiser miss it.
Yeah, you had an appraiser miss it. Yep. And that's why I say, I'm not necessarily looking for a clean copy. I just wanted it, either combined or noted on the contract itself that the price went up. So yeah, I guess Erica, Stacy, what I'm saying is, and to Christie's point, if you change it on the agreement of sale, that's fine. And I swear, half the time that I get appraisal contingents or escalation addendums, I'm counter offering anyway. I'm not going straight by the escalation clause. I'm using that escalation clause as a foundation for a counter offer. So I'm doing it on the contract anyway. Because a lot of times I'm fooling around with other contingencies, not just price. Did we beat that dead horse? Everybody have a good discussion here? Any other questions or comments, concerns?
No, I think it was a great meeting, and I think maybe there has been maybe like another little group that has spun off from it, that maybe there'll be some people trying to pull something together. So I think it was really good. Thank you, Justin, very much. And
If
thank you all for attending. Huge. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much. If you ever find yourself in a multiple offer situation that you haven't entertained before, please give one of us a call. We're happy to walk you through it. There's a multiple offer summary worksheet in your forms library. Chris has one. I have one. I know Erica's built one. Whatever you use to organize those offers, just organize the offers, right? Just make sure that you reach out and touch base with everybody who submits them and clearly understand what you're working with. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate you. And this group boasts so much knowledge. I'm just very, proud of you all. Thanks for being here.
Back at you, Susan.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mike, you smart ass.
I was gonna say, are we not gonna revisit the page 14 remarks?